Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, September 5th, September 15th. Let's hop in. So I kind of woke up fairly early this morning and then did like nearly a 3-hour recording of the last few episodes of Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and boy is that game getting exhausting. Like, I was really tired, and honestly it's just like I am not catching up on sleep in general. So I instead of continuing to stream, which was my plan, I went back to sleep, and so now we're starting later in the evening. Not incredibly late compared to some of the other times, but pretty late. And as for the accountability section, because these episodes of Rebirth are going 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes even 4 hours, I guess we don't have anything to do. So let's just buy one pack here. Because they're going so incredibly long, at best I'm getting two episodes a day, and it's going to take me probably the rest of this week and maybe weekend to finally finish Isaac, which I need to finish it. Like, I definitely am at the point where I'm just not really talking. I'm going quiet. I'm just trying to focus and succeed. I am playing it on hard, which is just kind of a reconfirmation to me that if I'm gonna be a video game critic and comment on the games, playing on hard makes that, for lack of a better term, hard. It takes too much focus, and it's just near impossible to accomplish good gameplay and commentary. And I won't even claim to make good commentary. I did get all the daily quests done off screen last stream, after last stream, which was nice, certainly, to get a little bit of boost in gold and wrap everything up. I guess we can play Forestcraft, Shadowcraft, Portalcraft, so probably Portalcraft and Forestcraft would make the most sense. And they're doing these Take-Two private matches, which we'll need to jump into one of those at some point. Maybe I'll make my own private match and cover the news quicker that way. But let's just play regular ranked to start with. Portalcraft. There we go. As far as everything else, I am sitting on 2 projects that if I can just stay awake long enough, I need to do 2 small things, really.
I bring unto you serenity.
Or perhaps 1 small thing and 1 medium thing that I'm failing to accomplish. One small thing is literally just moving a very heavy computer server case and moving it from point A to a more permanent position, and plugging it into a monitor and turning it on and making sure it just stays on. But yeah, and then the medium thing is to once again work on the irrigation system I tried to build and am trying to build and have now taken a prolonged break from due to mostly rain. It's working outside on the dirt is hard when it's muddy. It's not ideal, at the very least.
Terminating hostile life form.
And then, yeah, I'm still working, trying to teach myself how to use Kodi. It's weird that Kodi as a media service with a with a 10-foot interface. Still seems to kind of heavily focus around the idea of using Plex Media Server for a lot of people too. And I could imagine what's really going on there is that once somebody has set up a Plex Media Server, it's very difficult to then migrate away to something else. And Plex probably does make a lot of sense if you have one server that is then serving to multiple devices that are then playing over the internet using Kodi. And I guess that is more of a proprietary idea than, say, using DLNA. It is probably what is more standard. People just aren't using Microsoft's DLNA Universal Plug and Play more open standard, and instead are just connecting through clients to Plex. There is also AirPlay, which if Apple had just open sourced AirPlay as a concept, that probably would be the obvious standard to go with at the moment. And they're working on a standard called Matter that is supposed to connect like devices in the home, and I imagine Matter at some point will have a level of interconnectivity for music, video, pictures. Kodi does have an interesting differentiation it makes on music videos, which has let me experiment with that and set up some CDG files, which Kodi by default does not support that, but there is a fairly easy way to make it support anything simply by changing making an advanced settings.xml file in the user data. And so you just tell the video player to include something that ends in .cdg, and the internal I assume it's FFmpeg coding plays CDGs fine, which is relatively speaking fine, because CDGs are CD graphics files that are incredibly rough. They barely have any frames at all. They look awful. They look like they were made they were sort of professionally made, but made for such a small audience and made in, I imagine, the early 80s, that it is just very low resolution images you'd expect to see on a web page in the 80s. Also, I'm fairly certain that the way the video players play them in Kodi is not quite exactly right compared to if you were to put a CDG disc into a karaoke system. In that there's probably a bit more green screening that's supposed to be happening, and it doesn't seem like that's really getting accounted for. And obviously there is very little interest in karaoke in general in the West, and that has caused there to be no improvement there at all. And so, for the most part, a music video with synchronized lyrics, or just watching a music video on YouTube and turning on the closed captions, is as good of a karaoke file as you're gonna get, or good enough for karaoke. But a music video obviously is going to have the lead vocals and everything playing, and there's no way to take out the lead vocals and just leave the instrumentals and the backing track. So theoretically, every song should have 3 different versions at minimum, in which there should be a the release performance, which is either going to be a live or in studio recording of everything combined. There should be an instrumental performance that is a guaranteed there is no vocals in this at all, and then there should be a karaoke track that has the backing vocals and any other sound effects on top of the music.
Beautiful tonight.
And that's not really what gets released. Or it probably does get released, but it gets released in weird ways. And honestly, it just goes to show how the music industry has failed to innovate and failed to even maintain value in their offering. Because
all I need is an opening and you're toast.
As soon as like MP3s and things like that started to be big deal items and really cheap, that's the point where you would have started to say, hey, we're going to release DVDs full of music that are higher quality and have more features. And that's exactly what did happen with VHS and DVDs. Laserdiscs didn't have many features in most cases, but by the time you got to DVDs, there definitely were. It was a major selling point that DVDs had more features and better quality, and Blu-rays have only worked on that better. I guess you do this and this. And then attack here. And there was a slight transition, I think, from the interface and the way the menus are designed for Blu-rays versus DVDs, but there really wasn't too much of a change. If anything, the reason why we're seeing less Blu-rays on store shelves is because they now in this generation have started to run out of things to add as far as features, and while you can do better visual quality on Blu-ray and better audio, you still have a fairly large percentage of your audience that isn't doing anything different. Like the transition from a standard TV to HD TV was a long, hard push, and it's now kind of a still ongoing hard push to convince people to move from a 1080p TV to a 2K TV or a 4K TV. I heard there was actually a new non-mandatory version of the ATSC, I believe, over-the-air digital standard in America. So maybe in the next decade, most TV stations will move over to that new version, but without a mandate forcing them down that direction, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of TV stations never actually migrate over and actually just shut down.
Let's
see.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Things I do for fashion.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm really talking about any of that though. I guess that really just goes to show that I've been more focusing in on figuring out Cody than I have been making footage. On top of that, I also watched some Netflix and noticed that there was kind of a lot of new things that have come out on Netflix since the last time I looked at it, but yeah, year over year as far as my Netflix collection of things I would want to watch, the number goes up, but the actual things an actual amount of time I have free to see them is really low. Can't be targeted by enemy effects, and it's just gonna keep on summoning the same one. So I suppose we should just go through the news. We have a decent amount of news. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com has a deep dive how survival battles balance the demonic chaos of Total War Warhammer 3. So yeah, this is just talking about the development of the game, not particularly general enough news for me to pay attention to. And we have a game called Pegasus Broken Wings, which looks like it's a low effort game, also selling itself as a dating sim. Probably trying to sell on the idea of being a sex game, but doesn't really seem to have any actual nudity or sex in it. So that's kind of ridiculous. If anything, there was that Kickstarted sex game that came out a few months ago, and I think it kind of satisfied a lot of people, but it also didn't satisfy some people in that it was
the hunt has only begun.
Not much of a game, and there was more of a hope and a desire that there actually would be a game on top of just the idea of it being a
I love this job. Of course I do.
general sleazy game, I guess is the best way to describe it. It definitely feels a lot like that game, but looks way worse. This is $5.99 English only. Hopefully I made sense. That was one of the things in particular that came out as far as the latest episode I recorded, Binding of Isaac Rebirth, is at a certain point I was just talking. Like, not even talking about Isaac. So it was very much in line with the way I would just kind of go on random rabbit hole conversations while playing Isaac when I first started my channel, and I haven't done a ton of that outside of the live streams since then. There maybe have been an occasion or two, but I've mostly been limiting my content to be more ever relevant, and just talking about random things usually takes away from relevancy as far as the commentary as in the middle of game coverage. This next game on Steam is called Flower Girl. It has a whole bunch of Asian characters in front of it. It's not tagged with nudity or sex, but I can show like this one image and show it's pretty lewd, pretty big busty images, and a lot of screenshots are just kind of in lewd positions.
Then, gentle ghosts.
It's free to play, but then it has some free patch. It doesn't say it's an adult patch, and then it has a $5 extra. It is Japanese full audio and Chinese and English. As for what the actual gameplay is, seems like it's very minimal because every single screenshot is just showing the screenshot of characters, and yeah, the actual gameplay they barely even show in the trailer is just a match elimination game. That's what they're calling it.
Got you in my sight.
Okay.
Astral Hauser.
The uncharted desert awaits.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
Right.
I won't let you get away.
I'm ready for more. What do we have here?
This one,
Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
and then hit this one,
Things I do for fashion.
and
One
then
helping
hit
of this,
this
and it's
one,
99 for you.
and then end the turn. So yeah, when I see a game like Flower Girl, which is definitely trying to sell on sex, that
Stop
I
it.
guess resets the clock again.
This year's
Here we have a game called Between Time Escape Room, which looks like it might be a VR game, maybe not.
Nice marksmanship.
Otherwise, it looks like it's very possibly just a escape room. It doesn't look terrible, but it does kind of highlight how if you are going to make a game where you can interact with a lot of things, then you're going to probably have a fairly rough interface for interacting with stuff, and you can definitely see that's what's happening here. Is you're clicking it to zoom in, and when you're zoomed in into a specific item, you have a few places where you can click to change its interaction. Let's see, this is $7.99, and there's some other escape rooms that they have released, and seemingly none of them have been reviewed. English full audio. Let's see. This one would be October 14th, 2020. This is February 24th, 2021. They're not exactly flooding Steam. Here we can see this is actually rated very positively. So I'm going to just put that one on the wish list. And if we go back, we'll see if tested on humans is rated positively. Yes, it is. So there is room here for these three games in this series to potentially be purchased and used as a little mini series. I imagine that there isn't a lot of gameplay in it, so I imagine you probably can escape through the escape rooms after about 3 to 5 hours each time. And it may be a little too expensive if it is that short, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly how it is.
I bring unto you serenity.
Activate. Enhance. Fire.
Sorry, it went quiet there. We have Collateral Damage Remastered on Steam, which I thought this had already come out on Steam. It's $11.99, a whole bunch of languages. I don't think there's a great reason why you play the original game now, if you can play the remastered one, although the remastered one doesn't look like the visuals have been changed or improved that much. So I'll just put this on the fall list to make sure it gets 30 reviews, but yeah, I think that will probably quickly end up on the wish list. I don't know if there's really enough game though in cat lateral damage. It is something I've seen speedrunners play, and it is more of a troll joke game than it is something with long-term interesting gameplay. Same is true for things like I Am Bread or I Am Toast, whatever that game is called. Is that that's more of a joke concept. Here we have a game that's called, I don't know how to pronounce this, Totgeschwiegen? Yeah, these more German words. I'm not familiar with the pronunciation. Capital 1 I can pronounce. Third person RPG detective game. To me it looks a little bit like it might just be an asset flip game, on top of which it is seemingly being broken up into versions and chapters. And I'm glad to say that we have seen a considerable decrease in games trying to do that, trying to sell you an unfinished product or unfinished story. Like anything that starts with something 1 as its subtitle implies that they know that there would be a 2 for there to be a complete narrative, whereas No More Heroes was just called No More Heroes. It wasn't called No More Heroes 1. Bayonetta was just called Bayonetta, not Bayonetta 1. Super Mario Brothers, to go to an old game, called Super Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Bros. 1, because they're all standalone products. Or you would at least hope they were standalone products. And we haven't seen any legitimate game from a big producer with a number at the end of its title in a fairly long time. As far as the German game here, Totgeschwiegen, English is not even supported, it's German only for $17.99, which is way too expensive. Here's Gas Station Simulator, which... Yeah, there was some weirdness, I think, about this game when we first saw it, where there was an element where you're kind of working on cars, and it's kind of more of a garage slash gas station, and you also kind of develop the exterior of the gas station, and that makes it seem oddly disconnected from what it claims to be. And even in this trailer, it feels oddly disconnected from what it claims to be. It's odd that it's very positive at $17.99, because the actual gameplay here seems almost like a joke as far as what's being shown. And that would be definitely a weird position to be in, where you have to assume that what they're telling you the game is actually not what the game actually is. Let's play.
Hostile life form detected. Terminating hostile life form.
Yeah, I think even though it's rated very positively, just looking at what Gas Station Simulator is offering me, I'm completely uninterested in it. $17.99, English full audio with a lot of other languages supported.
This'll be over quick.
The same is probably true for Story of Seasons, Pioneers of Olive Town. There's kind of a decent argument to not play something like this. The only thing you could think is maybe this is the Animal Crossing for PC, but at $35.99, that's awfully expensive. Plus, there's an expansion pass, so really they're asking for $53.99 for the game. This definitely looks like graphics that would be better suited on a Switch or a cell phone. And we are getting to a point where very arguably cell phones are going to outclass and outpower a
I can't move.
outclass and outpower a Switch. Which of course that would be a shame. So yeah, we'll put that on the fall list. And just see, here we have a game called Bounce Ball Maze, which we can immediately dismiss. 99 cents English. GameDeveloper.com says the SEC has hidden, or I guess hits. I don't know how you put that in the past tense. App Annie with a $10 million fine for securities fraud. They're alleging that the company engaged in deceptive practices about how its data was derived. So they're being fined for basically ripping off shareholders, not actual consumers of their product. And the fines, I guess, from the SEC and other government agencies are in that category of, it's not an allegation that has to be proven, or you have to be proven guilty in court, and innocence is assumed before guilt. It's more of a case of your guilt is assumed and you would have to defend yourself against the fine in the first place. And in all fairness, you're not innocent until proven guilty in most things like speeding tickets and things like that also, because you have to establish a court date and take out time, which then loses money if you're working a job, or if your time is of any value at all, to defend yourself against accusations of speeding or whatever a ticket would be. And that's why in the United States, and probably in most places, the ticketing system, where there's just this default fine, is incredibly unfair to poor people who are the most likely to not be able to afford to pay the ticket, while being not really an inconvenience at all for rich people who can easily pay a ticket or hire a lawyer and just buy their way out of something. And in the case of App Annie, if they're being fined $10 million, they probably made $100 million worth of profit around the fraud, if such fraud actually happened. And you don't even really have to say allegedly in this case. You can just, once again, if they've been fined, you pretty much can just assume guilt, like the government and the SEC assumes guilt. But I guess there isn't really a better system either. The corporations and cheaters all over the place would definitely do a lot of shenanigans if they were innocent until proven guilty, and the SCC had to spend a lot more time defending their fines. And even at this point, most SCC and large anti-monopolist, anti-big business rules and regulations are very rarely enforced. Moving on back to video games, I'm kind of rambling there. Here we have a game called Pots and Potions, which seems to me like this is probably a very visual mess version of something like one of those cooking games where you're having to run around and get elements to make potions in this messy environment. And then there's is probably closer to a mixing mini game. It's free, which is interesting.
I bring unto you serenity.
English, Spain, Spanish.
My song will slay you.
So it doesn't seem like there's probably much of a game there. Here we have a game called Paradox in the Mirror, which just looks like a platformer with some creepy visuals. Which, yeah. I don't think that makes anything better at all, that there's this on top of everything else, there's something slowly reaching for you, trying to make you get through these frustration platforming elements. And it's bad design here. You have these eyes and these lips both acting as places where you regenerate your double jump. Yeah, in concept, I think this video might be slightly interesting to show off, but in actual, once you start to think about it for even a second, you realize that this looks terrible in its implementation, and there really is just not a lot of people that would put up with this level of low quality visuals. This is $9.99, English only. Yeah, I feel like I'm dragging once again. Gamatsu says Atelier Sophia 2, The Alchemist of Mysterious Dream, has been rated in Australia. It's an unannounced sequel that's likely set to appear at the Tokyo Game Show. The Atelier Sophia series, though, perhaps not as well received as the Atelier Rydo series. I think the original Atelier Sophia came out in November of 2015 for the PS4, PS5, PS3, and PS Vita, not the PS5. GameDeveloper.com has an article here. The Anti-Defamation League warns that sexist and racist in-game harassment is continuing to rise. We had a story like this come out just a few months ago, and every time it happens, you just have to remind everybody that the Anti-Defamation League is kind of a biased source. Like, as a charity, it has to fight against a problem, and it has to claim that problem is continuing, if not growing, to grow themselves as a charity and gain, if not money, popularity and influence. I
Speech
could
developed in
be
serenity.
willing to believe that there is perhaps an increase in hostility in the world in general because of the pandemic and just because of more divisiveness and more openness about your own people's own divisive ways of thinking. The idea of trying to be polite, well, something that never really existed in the first place, was put on as pretense for a few decades there.
I bring unto you
But
serenity.
I don't know what
Prepare.
information would have to come out to make me believe that. As somebody who doesn't play online games with chat and just does not engage in any of that, my life personally has not changed at all in a very long time, maybe a decade, simply because that was the last time I was even hearing anybody do any kind of voice chat or anything. And that at that time, 10 years ago, that would have been playing Uno on the Xbox 360, and
Hostile life form
like
detected.
generic, I guess, random messages. And it was not bad 10 years ago playing on the Xbox 360, which also, in fairness, the Xbox Live service was probably censoring out a lot of bad wordage, at least on the text.
What fine threads you have.
But
Terminating hostile life form.
I imagine it's not
This'll be over quick.
anywhere as bad as the Anti-Defamation League says it is. If anything, I would say it seems like the newer generation of kids are incredibly woke and incredibly sensitive and don't actually say offensive things. At least in at least in face-to-face interactions. So perhaps you could make an argument that
Threads you have.
they have become so pleasant and nice, kids have these days face to face, that the only time they're experimenting with being jerks is online when they think they can get away with it. Or it's not kids at all, which is also a very good chance that it is just irate 20 to 40-year-olds that are online. But, you know, the thing I would have to hear is I'd have to be watching YouTubers playing games and saying, yeah, it's gotten really rough, and that there's a lot more heated gamer moments, for lack of a better joke description.
Hold still.
That's about the
Hold still.
only thing I would expect that would make me actually believe that there's been major changes in the amount of hostility in amongst players. In a lot of ways, the Anti-Defamation League is probably making a lot of hay blaming video games and saying, like, this is just the new wave of that same logical fallacy that was pushed and is still pushed today, that every single mass shooting and mass shooter is some kind of violent video game fiend who
I'll sever your life
it
in one
was
still.
taught that life was not valuable because of playing video games, and every time that claim is made, it's just incredibly laughable because it is never proven to be really true. In almost every case, there is in almost every case there's no connection between video games and spree shooting kids. If anything, it seems like more often than not it is the opposite, that the spree killers are incredibly socially isolated and don't play video games compared to an average kid. And actually there haven't even been that many reported school shootings lately, which I guess the pandemic probably caused a lot of that to go away, because now you have this kind of great excuse to not go to school and not be upset about going to school or be harassed by kids. And see, that to me, I think, is also an indicator that bullying, if we're going to talk in-game harassment as a form of bullying, seems to be probably way down compared to what it was in previous generations, because I think the new generation of kids are incredibly sensitive and kind, and more woke, for better or worse. If wokeness leads to more kindness, then it isn't all bad as a concept. But yeah. I kind of would expect there to be more kids that were going as crazy as parents seem to be going crazy because of the pandemic. But it actually seems like it's very possibly the opposite. Maybe kids are seeing that their parents are going crazy and wild with crazy conspiracy theories and such, and kids want nothing to do with that, and they're rejecting insanity in general. That does seem to be fairly the trend. All the kids at, like, the gay-hating church, for instance, all pretty much left that church and rejected everything about it. And I imagine that is the case in a lot of instances. Okay. So, can't evolve.
Stay away.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Slime's Journey, which looks like a platforming game. It's kind of nicely polished, but there doesn't look like there's quite enough gameplay here. Seems like there's just a lot of platforming with an occasional boss that you have to fight. If this was a 90s game, this would be great and a pretty great seller, but coming out in 2021, it's really not offering enough of a challenge. Plus the visuals are kind of messy. There's just a little too much going on with the background. And see, this is the kind of game that is very similar to what a Game Boy game would be in modern time. So if you were a Game Boy fan, I could see a game like this potentially being of interest to you. But it also highlights the problems with Game Boy games, in that they were very simplistic. Let's see, this is $3.99, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Right. Do this.
Cheers for a grand slam!
And then we can't do this. So we do like this, I guess. With this and this. Next we have a game on Steam called Hidden Words, which seems like you just type in words based on pictures.
I remember all.
Or maybe hints.
Coming at you.
Early access $4.49, English, Spanish, Spain Spanish, Latin American Spanish. Says you can play with your Twitch chat. Honestly, games like these are just kind of the absolute garbage, and you could easily make a filter at Steam, at Valve, to say, hey, let's just search for the word Twitch, and anything that has the word Twitch in it, we should reevaluate and say, hey, we don't want you promoting other services on our service. You can take note that there's almost guaranteed to be no game out there that has the word Epic Games Store in its title or description, because I'm sure they're not allowing that to happen. But Twitch being not really a game platform, although Twitch does sell games, so this is straight up promoting in a very roundabout way. You're promoting a service, which is the Twitch streaming service and Twitch chat, that is definitely connected to Amazon Prime Gaming, which sells games in direct competition to Valve. It would make a lot of sense for them to get rid of games, or get rid of the word Twitch, at least in the description of games, but also just get rid of games that are mainly designed to sell to little kids who think they can be famous Twitch streamers and can't even play regular games, so they're looking for these generic, simplistic things that will work with the chat. Moving on, here we have a game called 100 Hidden Cups, which, if this is actually part of the 100 Hidden Something series, this actually looks way worse than the other ones. Yeah. Seems like they're getting worse, not better, with their packaging. English only. And at this point, there's just so many of these that you have to assume that it's just not really worth it. These, I guess, are the remnants of the old achievement games where you're getting 100 achievements for real cheap. Of course, there's long since stopped being a reason to want to have achievement games. Yeah. Because getting achievements really doesn't do anything.
The hunt has only begun.
Hope won't be extinguished so easily.
Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Alexandre Parisio, I guess, Parisio, maybe, will head up Amazon's Montreal studio. This was the Ubisoft Toronto co-founder. It's a new game studio, but we've yet to see Amazon Games actually make a game, and if anything, we've seen them fail a couple of times right out of the gate as far as making video games. And I would say somebody needs to put a stop to Amazon.com. We really should not be allowing corporations to become yet another Walmart or even a bigger and worst version of Walmart.
Booting program. Angelic salvation.
You know, it would be really nice if they could pass some anti-monopoly laws and take some anti-monopoly actions that
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
it focused in
Mankind's hatred is a curse.
focused in a little bit more and
I won't
sorry, I'm
let you
yawning,
get away.
and stopped some of the old monopolies like Walmart, but also stopped some of the new monopolies.
Wither,
I guess you hit this one,
you broke the curse?
and then you do that,
Unable to compute.
and then you do that.
Forever and evermore.
Hmm. Video Games Chronicle says Battlefield delay fears caused EA shares to price to drop 7%, but then the company recovered after the slip wasn't as bad as first thought. Yeah, it does seem like pretty much all games are getting delayed again, which, yeah. Pretty much even before the pandemic, game developers had no idea when their games were really going to launch, and they were very aggressive about putting dates on things and then pushing them back. Now that the pandemic is happening, it's totally up in the air, and they really should just not be announcing dates at all.
Mother, father, come on.
And there really is nothing stopping a corporation, even a publicly owned shareholder corporation, to just say, hey, we're not going to announce dates until we're really ready to go. It is built within the corruption of big corporations that they are announcing dates and making promises that they know they probably can't deliver on before shareholder quarterly meetings and annual meetings and things like that. And because from what I can tell, the actual amount of accounting and fiscal information you have to disclose to a shareholder is shockingly low and can just be obfuscated as here's our quarterly profits, here's our quarterly revenue losses, and that might be it. You could probably put out an email with 3 sentences and still be within the bounds of your duty as a duty to shareholders. You could probably also, as the board, just opt not to give out any information at all. And then maybe the board would get voted out if you didn't give out any information, but at least you'd be acting more honestly in that case than trying to goose your sales and your pre-orders through attempts and claims that the games are going to be ready when they obviously are not. Think you hit this one?
The things I do for fashion.
And then that one. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle says a new Skull and Bones details have seemingly leaked, which I guess means that this pirate game that was supposed to have come out like 2 or 3 years ago is still in development. Yeah, this was 2018 E3 that Skull and Bones was announced. Which, yeah, it definitely felt like it was going to be the year of the pirate for a brief moment there. And then that all of a sudden stopped being the case because the one pirate game that did come out wasn't that good.
Cheers for a grand slam! Hey, let's play! Cheers for a grand slam! We doing this?
Let's do this.
These wheels turn for him. Come at me, well.
Did that. that. Should I play this?
Hey, let's play. There's a chance for a grand slam.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's really going to be too interested in Skull and Bones when it actually comes out. The included information includes ship tiers, player progression, and customization. It kind of makes it seem like it's a MOBA type game. I suppose at this point it is worth going and looking at the trailer again just to remind myself what specifically Skull and Bones was trying to offer. And yeah, it's really important to realize that this really was a game that probably was greenlight because of the surprise success of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which was probably 10 plus years ago when that came out. So this concept probably has been rolling around for nearly a decade. And that video in 2018 said it was coming out in 2019, which, yeah, it definitely makes it seem like it's never really coming out.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
The hunt has only begun.
Sorry, but the time for games is over. One helping of this and it's nighty-night for you.
This one. And then
Move.
hit that one.
Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
And then we'll do that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Self-Made Devil, which looks like it's probably a cheap Chinese cell phone game ported to Steam. Early access, English and Chinese, full audio.
Stop it.
Why it's early access, I have no idea. Let's see. This may be too late, but either today or yesterday was the last day you could buy Forza Motorsport 7 before it was deleted. Nope. It was, I guess it's too late. Also, not really worth your time to even bother to buy a game when it's being delisted permanently, almost certainly. There isn't a newer Forza, I believe, at this point to replace it, which is the one thing that makes this a different scenario compared to what normally would be the case, where the game would just be delisted and nobody would care because the newer version was already out.
More corpses.
Oh, I played poorly there. I should have read what the card was going to do first. Let's see, here we have a game on Steam called Dan Plays that just looks like a low effort asset flip game. $3.19, English and Portuguese Brazil. Actually, calling this an asset flip is a little inaccurate because while this rocks and grass and trees may be an asset, this actual character design looks like the textures are hand drawn and look pretty awful. It would still definitely be an asset flip, but seems like somebody was trying to make it look more unique and kind of failed miserably in that aspect.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Let's see.
I did my bestest.
Here we have a game called Raster Prime Remix, which looks like it might be a physics game. Pixel puzzle game. That's what they're describing it as. And then it's tagged as a point and click. Honestly, I can't tell what it really is, but I don't think it really matters either, because what I can see tells me it's not really worth playing. And this is one of those examples where in stationary form it looks pretty bad, but in movement the animations might be a little bit better. This is $4.99. Whole bunch of languages. I'm gonna say no to that.
Wake up, sleepyhead.
Here we have Memoir de Arumac, which maybe doesn't support English. Free to play, French only. Looks to be just a generic RPG game. Maybe there's a little bit more to it, but not supporting English is definitely a problem for me. And
Hey, let's play.
maybe there's a level of thought that should happen there.
No more corpses. No more corpses.
Shutting down.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Upgrade VR, which just looks like a low-effort VR game.
Acorns flying out of the woods.
Early access, free to play,
Balance
English and Russian.
provided.
Run home, everybody.
What goes around?
Here we have a game called Bunch of Games, which just looks like garbage asset flip games. $2.54, English for audio. Yeah, if you're not even going to bother to really think of a better name for your game, there's no reason to give it a chance. Here we have Case 2, Paranormal Eve, which we'd just seen a different case version of this, didn't we? Yeah, I feel like Case... I don't know, maybe this was the same game and it just got relisted again. English and Chinese, $4.79. I guess I didn't put it on the fall list before, and I really don't think there's a reason to change that decision. So, we'll stick with that and not put it on the fall list again.
A thankless job.
Take it from here.
Here we have a game called Mandalay Day 1, which looks like it's
Stop it.
a slightly weird looking.
There's a reason we're
I already talked about this game. Man. English and Russian. Did I just open up a bunch of things we had already talked about? Have we just been talking about the same things? Maybe somewhat. This is September 13th, so we probably had already covered this. Burning Brick Breaker, obviously it's nothing. 99 cents, English only. And that would be pretty sucky if it turned out that I've accidentally been talking about the same things over and over again.
Cave in?
Let's see.
May the forest be at peace.
There's kind of nothing that can be done here.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Tangent Rush, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access, $3.31. Several languages, allegedly full audio on all of them. Looks like it's just a
Not sure if I can hold
Stop
back.
it.
swinging, bouncing game from the looks of it. We have Traffic Command Reborn, which, yeah, I just don't think I would want to control stoplights as a simulation. That seems like that's too simplistic a game. And from every screenshot here, it seems to be the same intersection that you're controlling over and over again. That seems really simplistic. $4.79, English only. Now, for a cell phone game, maybe that would make sense where you tap buttons, tap the screen anywhere, and it switches the north-south traffic versus the east-west traffic. and maybe that you could get kind of a rhythm game going where you're seeing mini roads and mini intersections, and you're only able to switch one thing versus the other thing.
I bring unto
But
you
yeah,
serenity.
even if you did have a cell phone game like that, that would be pretty boring pretty fast. I think this, what I'm looking at right now, proves something I've been saying for a long time here, that there is a major disconnect between mainstream video game journalism and who they like and who they're friends with, and what kind of games they like. And frankly, I think a lot of it straight up has to do with the fact that they all mainstream video game journalists are going to that Reset Era forum and similar Twitter and type forums, Twitter and other types of forums like Reset Era, and they're kind of just echo chambering themselves. I usually say circle jerking themselves, but I'll be more accurate and generous this time and say echo chambering themselves, to the point where they all think they like something, even if they maybe don't actually honestly, or wouldn't on their own come to that decision if they were left in a vacuum. It probably isn't even that nefarious. It just is a case of mainstream video game journalists, in the fact that they became mainstream video game journalists, have long since left what the average gamer's experience would be and the way an average gamer thinks. They are, in a sense, mental minorities. They just aren't not representative of the larger whole of the gaming community. And so you have a game like Deathloop from Arcane Studios, and I'm a little surprised that there haven't been any claims of racism as far as these reviews, but I bet in the next week we will have somebody make that claim, because you have African American looking male protagonist, female African American antagonist. It kind of feels like fairly obvious that this is either your daughter or your girlfriend, wife, and you don't realize it because of the time loop mechanics. But the actual game, Deathloop, to me, has always been kind of boring looking, and it's been a super hyped up game. There's been a lot of trailer and a lot of hype on it to make it feel like it was more than really what it sounds like it is. And I just did not see a lot of gameplay in it that that was particularly interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I've been very cautiously optimistic about Deathloop as a game. Now, when I've seen, well, I mostly have seen Giant Bomb cover it and talk about it twice, once in the Bombcast, once in a quick look, and then Nextlander, which I don't know why I'm giving Nextlander the time of day, but I'm trying to imagine who is worse, the former Giant Bomb employees in Nextlander versus the current Giant Bomb remaining employees. And yeah, all of them have been very, very positive on Deathloop, while also being very incredibly bad about describing the game and explaining it in a way that sounds like it really offers you anything at all as far as something new or interesting. As far as I can tell, Deathloop has worse versions of a lot of the effects of Dishonored. It is a more dumbed down, simplified version of Dishonored. It's a game that has a Dark Souls element, which a Dark Souls invasion element, which I think potentially changes how the game really is received for a lot of players, because if you have it set up where you're playing just in single player where nobody can invade you, then you're probably going to have a way easier time than trolls invading your game and killing you. And the only review I have seen of Deathloop that made any sense and explained it was from a YouTuber I follow who is very deep into only covering and talking about first-person shooting games such as Duke Nukem. So his understanding of that style of game, I think, is fairly high. And he was able to say, I think incredibly accurately, that this was going to be a very divisive game. And in the sense that some people are going to like it, some people are not going to like it, and some of it definitely feels like your mileage will vary depending on how long you stick with Deathloop. And the reviews are totally in that same category. 64% of 2,646 user reviews are positive, meaning the whopping 36% of players are not positive, compared to IGN 10 out of 10, GameSpot 10 out of 10. Like, that is really crazy. And that's not just like them hand-picking reviews. OpenCritic Metacritic was giving the reviews, the critics in general, the trusted OpenCritic Metacritic reviewers. Now, it is worth pointing out that the PC version of Deathloop has Denuvo in it and is running like garbage. So over time, Deathloop may get a much higher review if they fix that issue. And that probably also highlights the fact that they handed PlayStation versions of the game to all the mainstream video game journalists, and this is a great example of how mainstream video game journalists are getting a different experience than your average player, in that they are at least being curated to and given the highest amount of opportunity to have a good experience. By being given the PlayStation versions when the game developer knows the PlayStation versions are better. I think Deathloop, it is also worth pointing out that I think there is a lot of failure or laziness that's happening in Deathloop. When you see all of these characters have these weird masks, so you don't have to draw realistic, good-looking people, with the exception of the main antagonist and protagonist, and the more important visionary characters that you have to assassinate. Really, this is just Dishonored set in a more future sci-fi environment. Which, honestly, they should have just sold it as that way. This is Dishonored in a different environment. without any of the elements holding you back. It'd be interesting if actually near the very end of the story in Deathloop it turns out that the Watcher and the main story characters of Dishonored are in an alternate universe, or this is in a different timeline. That would be interesting if it was just set hundreds of years past the events of Dishonored. But even if that was the case, they never really tried to tell you that this was going to basically be Dishonored in a different environment. There's more guns, definitely, in this game compared to Dishonored, so that is something. The fact that they're all or almost all of them are wearing masks also potentially introduces the idea that maybe the main character is killing himself and clones of himself, which that is a possibility. I think it is also worth pointing out, from what I hear, you have one face-to-face conversation with the main antagonist at the beginning of the game and one at the end, and then the vast majority of the time, or the rest of the time, you are only hearing her on the radio, and she just when she shows up physically at any point, you are supposed to just shoot on sight.
Time to get started.
So yeah, Deathloop definitely deserves to be on the fall list, but I could not recommend anybody buying the PC version, and frankly, from what I'm understanding about it, I don't think I could recommend anybody buying the game at all. Proceed with caution. Be very willing to quit early and rage quit a game like that. Don't be surprised if the game really is only 12 hours long and not a full 60. Don't be surprised to get to that level of 60 hours of gameplay. You might have to do a lot of grinding and replaying. The general concept starts from a corrupted idea, in my opinion. The idea of, hey, let's make a game that is very repetitive so we don't have to make as much content, and that the player should just play it over and over again. And in all fairness, Binding of Isaac is that way, and Binding of Isaac was super successful. Rogue Legacy is that way. There is a significant number of games and roguelikes and roguelites that are definitely that way. But notice they're not really describing Deathloop as a roguelite, when really it is. It's just a 3D first-person shooter also. And that kind of confuses the issue because people are not used to seeing a 3D first-person shooter that has roguelite elements to this extent.
What fine threads you have.
100% steam and zero steam in a turn and out.
Okay.
There's our puppy the game.
Should we evolve anything or attack? Can't and can't. Next we have a game on Steam called Hold the Plates, which looks like just a garbage game. $1.99 English only. Oh, I should also say, I don't even have it up, so it'd be kind of hard to show it. I'll have to bring it up. Here we have a game called Dalruin World of Magic, which just looks like an RPG game. $7.99 English only. Yeah, there's nothing there I think would make me trust that and want to play it. Let's see.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Do this. to evolve here. And hopefully that kills it.
This is not a warning. Commencing termination
Nope.
protocol. Destroying target.
Can't be attacked and can't be destroyed. So I would have to have done more damage to it. Well, this is going poorly.
Watch as I wind and
Hold
wind.
still.
Okay.
Go! Go! Crazy, crazier, craziest!
Let's see. So, this game, Life is Strange True Colors, which came out September 9th, 2021, is rated very positively overall, and surprisingly is on my wish list, which I feel like I'm probably being very generous with that. Has been slightly reviewed bombed for the incredibly stupid political reason that at some point in the game there is a Taiwanese flag and China is in the process of annexing slash acquiring, I guess the acquiring, annexing. Why is this not depicting right, though? This is like September 9th through September 6th. The date range here should be the lifetime of it. Let's just reload the page and see if that fixes that. We may have to turn off their ad blocker to get a better
Unit confirmed.
depiction.
Sleep.
This is not a warning. Commencing termination. Destroying target.
That took,
I'll see you.
Termination sequence.
that sucked. Alright. Maybe my zoom is wrong.
Let the immorality tour begin.
Maybe they have just manually done this.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you?
Let me just zoom out some more.
Check this out. If you want me to hurt you, just say the word. Damage heavy. I'm so
Yeah, I can't figure out what's going on there. I wonder if they just manually fix this. And this is once again, like, pretty much the only case where China has created this anti-review bombing need, and China posting its own propaganda through video games while also being incredibly censorious and controlling of video games is once again the problem, on top of bad Chinese developers just flooding Steam with bad games, and I think that is very much the case. This summary, as it's being depicted, I cannot figure out a way to get a bar graph to show anything here at all, but we can see that of the negative reviews, there really are only 380, so maybe Steam has already come out and cleaned them up, because I'm not really seeing any Chinese listing at all. I'm not seeing any Asian language. Let's see. But there is kind of a heavy number of non-English reviews for the game. But it seems to be mostly Russian reviews and European, German reviews. I'm not seeing any Asian characters at all under the negative. Maybe there's a completely different listing here. Maybe I just was like given fake news. Because yeah, I got this from one source that said that was happening, and it certainly has happened in the past, so it was very believable. But either Steam has already completely undone that review bomb, which maybe in this case the review bomb was literally being done by a botnet that was easy to detect, or maybe this is an indication that secretly in the background of Steam's database they have figured out a way to identify and eliminate fake reviews.
I bring unto you serenity.
I hope you're ready to escort me.
Which I'm sure Red Candle Games, with their game that still is not available for purchase really, would have really appreciated that kind of level of protection against being review bombed. There is only a slight difference between an artist sneaking and lettering, making fun of the Chinese president, and it getting deemed basically illegal, if not directly illegal, in China, and a game depicting a flag of a country that existed at least at one time. I mean, you can see in this screenshot here, here's a, I believe, Colombian flag, unless that is the Taiwanese flag. I guess we should see what that looks like even, because I don't really know what it looks like. So they seemed to have a bit of a desire to have flags of different countries depicted. Let's see, Taiwan's flag. And even on Wikipedia, it just in an original search says, relabels it as Flag of the Republic of China. So yeah, it seems to me like China says this is Republic of China flag, this red with a white sun and a blue square, whereas this seems to be the more traditional Taiwanese flag of a flower pattern. Although this also seems like it is including the Olympic rings. Not a terrible thought. So there's like a blue sun and circle, but then mostly white background. I think the Olympic rings also are supposed to represent kind of racial uniformity. So to remove that is suspect at least of a less pro-racial equality concept. I would assume that's what you're taking, but I am just assuming. But yeah, it seems like it's a fairly simplified flag. Anyways. So yeah, maybe that was fake news, maybe it wasn't. I guess what we do is I need to do more research, and this is the kind of things that real video game journalists should do, but very few real video game journalists do. This game animation studio manager looks like garbage. $7.99 English only. Let's see. Life is strange. And since this was one of those stories that is from a smaller source that I have, that does mean that Bloomberg and GameDeveloper.com really have not been covering it. Oh, I see. Here's the problem. Here we have from PC Gamer, a credible enough source. Chinese players start review bombing Life is Strange True Colors over the Tibetan flag, which Tibet was already acquired decades ago and taken over by China. Not the Taiwanese flag, which Taiwan is in the process of it. So yeah, there's this definite, obvious, established pattern of China just ever expanding, and you're fooling yourself if you believe that they're ever really going to intend on stopping. As their population grows, there's just this natural push to continuously try to acquire more land, more control, and more resources that come with more land and more control. So yeah, not heavily covered story, and definitely a story that should have been covered more often. Clearly also I need to clean up PC Gamer just in case I ever come back and see any more of their stories. A flag being banned in mainland China, which yeah, mainland China, basically just excluding Hong Kong, which also we've completely forgotten about the whole Hong Kong acquisition that's happening. But yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. It might make sense that you would ban the Nazi flag for all the atrocities in Germany, and they do ban that. But honestly, it probably would be better to just allow even the Nazi flag in Germany for fear of censorship coming back and creating a worse monster. I think if any redneck in Germany started flying a Nazi flag, they would probably get beaten up in Germany anyway, so you might as well just make it legal. Germany's censorship laws, I think, have probably were never needed, and they're definitely not really needed now. I could get maybe in the first decade after the fall of Nazi Germany, you would have this fear that Nazism would come back into power, but even a decade would be fairly ridiculous. It'd be the equivalent of Democrats in the United States banning Trump flags and Trump hats as soon as Biden became president, for fear that Trump would come back into power. And honestly, it shows a lack of confidence in your current governments.
All of you.
So yeah, that wasn't fake news. It was just very underreported. Yeah, and that once again highlights how mainstream video game journalists really just copy and paste from their own sources and repeat each other. And if Bloomberg News, if Gamma Sutra, I'm a little surprised more people aren't following PC Gamer. If they're not following the right people, or the right people don't talk about it, it doesn't become focused on. Anyways, more focused directly on games. We have a game here called Super Drag Racing. Looks kind of pretty, but looks pretty simplistic also. $1.19 English only. Here we have a game called Shambled Spiral, which looks like a garbage asset flip game. $1.99 English only. We have a game called Coring VR Wonderland Red Queen's Black Magic. That sounds like a lot of words that don't make a lot of sense. Coring maybe is a brand of something. I don't recognize it. The actual game is too busy. It's just too visually busy. I don't think there's an actual experience here that you can have. Yep. It's very polished in this trailer. Like, normally I'm complaining about games looking boring, but in this case there's just far too much going on. And it seems to me like it's basically just a tower defense game where you're standing in one place and shooting a lot of people. Tower defense game in the sense that you're defending crystals or towers, and you personally are the tower that's shooting. This is $23.99 English, Korean, Chinese. That would make a lot of sense if this was a Korean company. Why it would be prettier looking and why it would be something that I wouldn't recognize. But also it's still just too excessive. Let's just end that there. Let's see, here we have a game on Steam called Trip Saber, which looks visually too ugly as a Beat Saber clone. $2.99 English only. Here we have a game called Kick It, which just looks like a simplistic physics game of no interest. $6.29 is ridiculously expensive. Whole bunch of languages. We have Dice and the Tower of Reanimation, Glorious Princess, which just looks like an RPG Maker game, although maybe not actually made with RPG Maker. Although it's hard to tell that, also because there's several versions. This is $5.99 English and Chinese. I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually sometimes coordinated efforts to flood Steam with bad games from China as a way of punishing Steam or making Steam look worse than the Chinese offering. But the research that would have to happen there to prove that theory would be Steam would have to have the real hardcore numbers as far as how many hundreds, if not thousands, of games come out in certain periods from China, because so many games come out. See, you'd have to see at least a 30% uptick in bad games before I'd actually start to believe that there was an intentional release of games,
100% strength
and
0%
it's fairly impossible to have such a big uptick and have it happen quickly, which would definitely explain a theory of just constantly putting out bad games, intentionally bad games on Steam, if that's actually what's happening. I don't really feel like that is what's happening, though. I think it is just a lot of desperate Chinese companies that have been allowed to make a thriving business selling bad Famicom, NES era clone games, because there was no competition at all in China for the longest time, and now that they're having to actually stack up their games versus the rest of the world, they're paling in comparison as far as quality.
Heavy.
Shutting down.
So, yeah.
You're mincemeat.
Fool.
Is there any way to survive this? If there is, it's doing this.
feeble-minded
Battle mode activated.
My,
That,
my mask.
Battle mode.
that
My mask.
didn't evolve up to that.
Limiters removed.
Watch as I wind and wind.
Battle mode activated. I am reborn. Know my fury.
Well, that gets me up to 7, so maybe I can win here. Yep. Yeah, I think even Steam having all of the data could probably never make a good enough argument to claim that China was actively encouraging companies to make bad games to flood the Steam marketplace. Also, if they make that accusation against China, they also need to make that same accusation against Brazil, Portuguese, and the same accusation against Russia, because there's just a lot of bad games from those companies also, or those countries also. And it's perhaps a little xenophobic to paint with such a broad brush, but I certainly kind of have to with the limited information I have as far as games. I could certainly see them saying we're going to increase scrutiny on the types of games that get released, and it would disproportionately affect China, Russia, Brazil games.
Sisters, I love you.
Just because most of them are garbage games.
I am reactivated.
Okay.
Oh, lamentable fate.
He just conceded. That's interesting. I was probably going to win there,
Sleep
but
enveloped in serenity.
I figured he'd make me actually figure out the right way to play. Well, if we get 2 more victories there, we'll get at least most of the daily quest done today. Let's see. Yeah, and I think it is also worth pointing out that there's plenty of low-effort garbage games that support only the English language, and so I have to just generally say those are American, United Statesian games or Western games. Cave Digger 2, Dig Harder. It's probably a great example of that. Although I don't recommend them.
Come on.
I don't recall ever seeing a Cave Digger 1. This is $9.99. It's VR game, English only. Let's see if this developer actually does have a Cave Digger 1. Yes, they do. and it was mixed reviewed. Came out in 2018 and has only 28 reviews, so it wouldn't be relevant anyways. And in a funny way, this idea is at least unique as far as VR, where you're cave digging versus just playing a Beat Saber clone or something similar. I ate a pizza before I started streaming, and I knew that was going to cause me trouble one way or the other. I figured it would send me to the bathroom, but honestly, I think the saltiness of a meat lover's pizza is getting to me at this point. Video Games Chronicle says PS5 consoles will be available for GameStop Pro members today. A very limited number of bundles will go on sale at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So they are bundling them, and that is very much in line with how GameStop has done business in the past, is that you can't just buy from them the basic version of the PS5. You have to buy a bundle that costs more and maybe offers you more, but it's offering you more things you don't want. PlayStation 5 still incredibly hard to get. This should be big news in that it once again is a delay. So Dying Light 2 has been delayed again and is now planned for 2022. Techland says it needs more time to polish and optimize the sequel. The problem here is this game was originally announced and then delayed, I believe, at least twice before, and it kind of does have a rabid fan base that really kind of does want to see Dying Light 2 come out and be successful. It was originally announced for December 7th of 2021, and it was pushed back to February of 4th now. But also, I think there was also some controversy of it feeling like it was delayed or not out in a reasonable amount of time. Because I feel like Dying Light 1 has been out for 6, maybe even 7 years now, and you would have expected by 4 years there would have been a sequel. So as good as Dying Light and the original Dead Island were, I think maybe there is this just habitual issue of their games not being particularly done on time, which definitely would explain why Dead Island 2 was made by, I believe, a different company than Techland, and why they never came back to Dead Island, and Dead Island 2 was a very different game. Moving on, Nvidia has confirmed the leaked GeForce Now list is real, but claims that the games on it are speculative, which is to say, probably just made up in the database. Well, a lot of them were just made up in the database for fun. So, yeah, God of War PC, Gear 6, things like that on PC. Decent chance that they wouldn't come out. So, yeah. that it basically was a wish list. And while I suppose it might be newsworthy to talk about a leaked list of games, it's only newsworthy as far as there was a leak. If anything, this isn't video game news as much as it is just a security IT bit of news. Just showing that there had been a leak of information. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the Platinum has confirmed that Astral Chain's director is working on a new project. Studio head cryptically comments it would be nice if the game was revealed soon. Which, I mean, for Astral Chain, I don't know why it wouldn't be. Like, Astral Chain already came out and was not a huge success, particularly in the West. So, I don't know what they mean by it would be nice if the new game that's being worked on was revealed soon. Part of the problem with Astral Chain is it looked like a fairly fine game, maybe a little weird in its color palette, and maybe a little too anime inspired and not modern anime. It's kind of like a cartoony looking game using anime inspired graphics more than it feels like, oh, this really is an anime. Because it's been a very long time where I've seen much of any sci-fi games or sci-fi animes, let alone sci-fi animes that are dark city background environments fighting monsters. That this is just something of a different era. Yeah. And mech like robots. It's been a long time since I've seen anything like that too. Like you're talking 10-15 years ago, this would be what you would expect to see from an anime. Nowadays it's much closer to bright, colorful isekai animes, and now I think animes in general are more willing to have more lewd characters in general, and just be more upfront about it. Wait, this Astral Chain feels like it has been fairly censored to be more kid-friendly. Let's see, do we need one more victory? Yes, we do. Yeah. If Astral Chain wasn't on the Switch and was on something else, it did sell 1 million copies, so it wasn't a failure. But if it was on PC, which I don't think it is.
Let's get this party started.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Switch exclusive, so if it came out to PC, maybe I would check it out, but also I probably wouldn't be super interested in making a special effort to. Like intentionally play it, like, because it just was not a big enough success. It's very much a game that feels like it's out of its time.
0% fluff.
Moving on, Gearbox says it won't show any new Brothers in Arms, show the new Brothers in Arms yet due to the Colonial Marines backlash. Quote, I'm not saying poop until we have it, and it's actually inaccurate to say poop, and censor yourself if you're quoting somebody, but I'll do that just for YouTube family friendliness. Now that is the Randy Pitchford we have expected to see in the past, but it also highlights a clearly learned lesson. Maybe you can teach an old dog new tricks on a rare occasion, in that he has finally learned to be quiet and just not say anything and not cause controversy. Of course, the Aliens Colonial Marines led to a lawsuit against Randy Pitchford, if not personally, business-wise, and Gearbox for how much was deceptively advertised and promised. And so, as a company, on top of just Randy Pitchford, they have both learned to not advertise and show content that is going to potentially be drastically different from what the game is, and overhype people. It is questionable to me as someone from the outside whether Brothers in Arms is a series that had a major following. I think it had a decent following at some point, but I don't know if that following is going to come back and people are going to be willing to play with it more or re-enter that series. If anything, it seems like old games are pretty much just best left on the annals of history, and things like Halo even coming back in Gears of War and Crackdown, all of those potentially are going to fail or have kind of not really succeeded as well as they should. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like considerably fewer people that come back to play the newest Halo compared to the, I guess, previous Halo. Okay, so I guess you have to play it this way, and then this way.
Hold still. Ow.
To die or not to die.
Watch as I wind and wind.
Let's see. Yeah, I guess that's as much as I can do. Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says the critically acclaimed Colors art series is out on Switch today with a sonar pin accessory. The device allows for pressure sensitivity drawing without batteries or Bluetooth, which I assume means that this is sending some kind of unique audio signal into a headset jack plug. I guess that's what the Switch has, is a full headset plug that could have a microphone. It probably is also drawing power from audio going out. So I bet if you plugged in a headset and it couldn't sense that it was actually communicating with the pin, somehow it probably is playing some high decibel, maybe inaudible, high frequency sound, which might hurt kids' hearing, or just an annoying sound. It'd probably be better to make it audible and annoying so people wouldn't continuously listen to it thinking they're not hearing any sound. Color series, though, is not something as far as what I've ever heard of. So, and it's just a generic name. I guess it's been on several consoles, and that might be it. It doesn't look like a terrible thought for what it is. The idea of sketching and drawing on a touchscreen like a Switch compared to just using a tablet or something else that you could carry with you. Nobody is going to take like a Wacom tablet to an aquarium and draw that way on a laptop with a tablet. What you're going to do normally is you would set up photos and be a bit of a shutterbug to start with, and then draw from the photo reference of your photos after the fact.
This will be over quick.
That. It did not move fast enough. Yeah, I guess the real question here is how much is it? It's $50.
These clothes? Just got them sharpened. Lol.
But in a weird way, you have to go to Colors Live's website, and it gives you then a physical order for the solar pen and a digital copy of the software. There is something here to this, I think, more, in that they're giving you specific things that you're trying to copy, or they're just having a real sharing setup. So yeah, it doesn't seem like the software just gives you a blank canvas and tells you to think of something to draw. It seems like either the sharing element of it or the game itself has a default yeah.
I bring unto you serenity.
Yeah, it says
Courage are at my back.
here. It includes a color quest mode where players can receive daily challenges to paint a picture based on a set theme of specific rules, such as being allowed to paint in grayscale. The game is the creation of Yoko Island Express and chronicles of Riddick director Jens Anderson. The first game, simply titled Colors, was a homebrew art title created for the 3DS. While it wasn't official software, it became one of the best-known homebrew apps for the DS and was downloaded over 1 million times. Interesting. Colors 3D was released on eShop. It was the 10th highest scored 3DS game of all time. Interesting. And I guess because they're keeping it simple stupid, as far as what they're offering and what the game is, it is an interesting success story that really probably can't be ripped off or emulated too much, because how many color apps are you really going to get? Yeah, I guess looking at their website, there will be a retail edition. So, with the pen, which, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yes, the pin will just be wrapped in plastic around the regular 3DS holder. They did not put enough room to have anything other than a basic cartridge in the 3DS holder. The game itself doesn't seem to really have much more of a description though. Just that one video. I think it could be a bit more informative. Also, though, if I was actually listening to the audio, it probably is describing things. Part of the problem though here with an idea of Colors Live or any coloring app on the Switch or digital format is that's just really not the way art has been done for thousands of years. And moving over to digital or starting at digital is probably a mistake. For new people, they probably should be drawing with pencils and paints and paintbrushes and chalk and just using their hands and getting their fingers as close to the bare metal of painting as possible to build that skill and see immediately and directly the way art is made and the way one brush stroke, one line of the pencil affects your picture. And then it is only at a later point that it starts to make sense financially or just inexperience wise to start potentially drawing with a tablet. And even in that case, I think a lot of people probably still draw something in pencil on paper first and then trace it with the tablet to clean up the lines and start from that point, go further to digitize it. So yeah, it is kind of backwards to give a kid a coloring app for the Switch and make it digital when you really should just be giving them a pencil and paper and telling them to draw that way, or paints and things like that. And those are all things that kids should probably do anyways. That way they are not in front of a screen. And if you're doing the whole screen time thing, which most parents seem to be doing these days, I'm not sure too many kids are going to be happy to paint on and take up their screen time playing a video game that could be done physically. Let's see, moving on. Hideki Kamiya says companies need to do more to make classic games available. Quote, if people want to play a classic game and they can't, it's holding back game culture. It's holding game culture back. That is definitely true. The part of that sentiment that he's not saying out loud, and I think he probably knows as well as anybody does, is if people want to play a classic game and they can't, then it's pretty much free domain to be pirated at that point. I think the concept of abandonware should include that. If you can't reasonably and easily play a game, it should be considered abandonware and then morally acceptable to pirate, whatever that really means. And at a certain point, games should be probably declared abandonware a lot earlier and a lot easier and be made free for the public domain to do whatever they want to, including making spin-off games and ports and clones of it, instead of giant, often terrible video game companies that are just sitting on licenses and never having any intention on doing anything with them. Video games have allowed a lot of people to feel as though they have gained some ownership and interaction with that form of entertainment a lot more than books and music and movies. So it is a direct affront to people's personality, and this is probably true for all entertainment actually, if you cannot continue to or re-experience something that was part of your youth, part of your childhood. Like, those memories at a certain point do belong to people, but people's memories fail and they need the reminder or want the reminder to go back and play a game again. And it is upsetting, to say the least, when you want to relive an experience you've had in the past and for no good reason you can't.
Hostile unit confirmed.
That's why there was this, like, speculative sci-fi, like,
This'll be over quick.
concept that was put out of a future where people die and their brain is getting uploaded to the internet, but then to be able to remember ever hearing a song, you have to pay a new license fee to be able to remember that song as your memories and brain is being uploaded to a backup and to the internet. And that is a very disconcerting thought. If you could extend a human being's lifespan, in part even by uploading it to the internet, their consciousness to the internet, but then corporate interests were able to modify your brain completely. In all fairness, that's already happening to a certain extent. Coca-Cola has managed to brainwash a lot of people with their advertising, like, and with their addictive sugar chemicals. So, yeah. How much influence corporations have on people's minds already is probably way too high, but people would not want to see that go even higher.
Watch as I wind and wind. Ooh, that's hot.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ooh, that's hot.
And lies.
There we go.
I am such a genius.
Of course, Hideaki Kamiya is also, like, the creator of Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, and those games in particular have not been particularly hard to play or get. Like, so Platinum Games, Devil May Cry creator and developer, really is putting his money where his mouth is, because he's not holding back on anything, with maybe some exception that for a while there some of their lesser known Platinum games were not easy to play, and they ported them to Steam.
Such a good guinea pig.
Apparently it's the 20th anniversary of the GameCube game. Video Game Chronicles has this article, 25 best GameCube games you need to revisit. I think it'd be fairly hard to decide you wanted to revisit the GameCube. Probably a little bit even more difficult than going back and playing Nintendo 64 games, where I think once you cross from Nintendo 64 to GameCube, it feels like you're in a whole different generation of styles of games, and I feel like the GameCube in particular was trying to be much closer to the PlayStation and further away from the limited but interesting experiences that you had with
and 0% fluff.
Mario games.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
And, I mean, Nintendo 64 games.
Everything was a lie.
Except harmony.
I guess I could have evolved this.
My fault lies with you. I am such
And
a
then
genius.
put the Bane on that one. So they're saying Dream Mix TV World Fighters, which kind of looks like a Smash Brothers type game. The Tony Hawk series in general, Beautiful Joe 1 and 2. They're kind of mixing this together. WWE Day of Reckoning 1 and 2, which I'm not sure they really would have been WWE at that point if not WWF. Capcom versus SNK to EO, which, do you really need to play a fighting game that, or would you just want to jump to a newer one? This obviously has been a stretched out list to get to 25. I don't even know why they went to 25. They should have done 20 for the year 20. World Soccer Winning 11. I don't see that looking interesting. Def Jam Vendetta and Fight for New York. Really, this is about 50. Closer to 50 than 25. Burnout 2. Soul Calibur 2.
Can manage this.
Animal Crossing. All of these games look incredibly rough. Except for maybe Animal Crossing. Pikmin 2. I can't agree with that. I would like to go and play Pikmin 2. Again, but I really only want to play them in
At least we got our mark.
I really would only want to play them in PC forms and PC ports, and even at that it's a Nintendo game, so there's still a decent reason to not play the Pikmin games. And I kind of just wish there were more PC clones of Pikmin. There is Overlord 1 and 2 and the DLC Raising Hell. Luigi's Mansion, yeah, I could see wanting to replay that. Although I feel like that's already been ported to the Switch, so going back and playing the old version is kind of crazy. Ikaruga, I tried to play that game. It was too much of a bullet hell shooter for me. But it is still, I think, one of the best beloved bullet hell shooters out there. Resident Evil 1, why would you play that instead of the remastered PC versions? Super Monkey Ball, why play this instead of the PC versions? Really, this is mostly just making an argument for playing the remastered versions, which they've been fairly good about remastering.
Still need to train more.
Excuse me. Alright, and we've got
Enveloped in serenity.
this. We may have some leftover games. Horsecraft or Swordcraft. Neither one of those are going to be particularly easy. Do we have a different Horsecraft to even play? No. Let's see. Zelda Twilight Princess, I believe, has been remade since then, so I don't know why. Mario Kart Double Dash think it's been newer versions, better versions of that have come out.
My
Eternal
warriors
Darkness,
stay
Sanity's Requiem. That's a game that needs a PC remaster or reboot. That would be fine. F-Zero series certainly could be on PC and get remastered, but haven't. Hasn't happened. Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, think that's been re-released. Also, so I don't know why you'd actually play these on the GameCube. And that's what this really boils down to, is you're giving me a list of games that have been mostly re-released on better platforms since, in better forms since, so it's not really reasonable that you would try to find a GameCube and find those old copies and play it in its original form. And it has I think almost everybody would agree, it's more about the game than it is the platform. If the game plays well on the PC versus an Xbox versus a PlayStation 5, like, it doesn't matter to me one bit which platform you play it on. I tend to like to have everything together, and I'm a PC gamer for that reason. But if there was a way to record footage easily with the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, I definitely would at least consider getting those and playing games that way. Yeah, again, Wind Waker. Why play the old version? Why play on the GameCube with the GameCube controller? Which, GameCube controller is not terrible, but by modern standards, it's going to feel really weird. Smash Brothers Melee. There might be an argument for Nintendo releasing older versions of Smash Brothers, certainly. Metroid Prime, yeah. Again, if they should re-release that. Resident Evil 4. Arguably, Resident Evil 4 is one of the few games that would be justified in going back and playing it, but not on the GameCube. On the Wii, with the Wiimotes and the Wii aiming, is the only argument there. And then they've got some more honorable mentions of Chibi Robo, which I think that was a fairly interesting looking game. Disney Sports Football, I didn't ever see that one. Donkey Konga with the drums. I'm a little surprised they never came back with that.
Hatred is a curse.
Stay away.
Forever and evermore.
Hey, let's play.
And I guess Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And then Friday Night Round 2, Fire Emblem, Gun, Killer 7. That's on PC. Why would you play it there? Lego games. I would recommend playing Lego games on consoles, but not the GameCube. Midway Arcade Treasures 1, 2, and 3. Prince of Persia Sands of Time. Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica X. Resident Evil 0 and Rocky. Sonic Adventure, Super Mario Sunshine, Time Splitters, and Time Splitters 2, which those should be rebooted or ported, remade, but I'm not sure they ever would. Yeah, in a lot of ways that was just somebody taking the top 100 games from the GameCube and recontextualizing them because of an anniversary. And if anything, my disappointment of this article just telling you, hey, play these games that people liked on the GameCube, even though most of them have been remade, and they didn't really even bother to put any links here, is kind of ridiculous. And if anything, it highlights Video Game Chronicle kind of failing to recognize a quality way of writing an article like that.
Let's play.
Wither.
And honestly, it really probably highlights what Nintendo themselves are probably thinking around the GameCube and their old consoles is that unless they have a really good idea, maybe it is better to just not even mention or put out just a simplistic tweet on the anniversary of the GameCube, even a 20th anniversary. What would have made sense
I've no intention of putting down roots.
is for them to have released a Super NES Mini and then on the 20th anniversary released the GameCube Mini. Although questionable if they really even need to release the mini versions that play games, and or if they just should have released them as skins for the NES and Super NES Mini. Although that'd be very weird to play a NES. And that may very well have been their plan before the shortage of just about everything happened. Is that they may have originally planned on having a GameCube Mini come out on the 20th anniversary. Yeah. Video Game Chronicles has a story here. 343 claims it has no plans to bring Halo 5 to PC, despite it being on that leaked list. Which, yeah,
Follow behind.
Halo 5 almost certainly will eventually come to PC,
Your neck is a stem.
but
Let me snap it.
it's gonna be a while. What's confusing me though is Halo 5 the newest Halo that's about to come out, or is Halo 5 the one where you don't even really play as John Spartan and you're like hunting him down for half of the time? What trailer am I looking at here? This does not look like a Halo game. This is a Halo game. Wow, and this really shows how small a human is compared to the genetically engineered in power armor people. Yeah, this is Halo Infinite. So I don't know if Halo Infinite is the latest Halo game or not. If it is, that is a different trailer from what I've seen previously.
Guess I'll live and die.
Stop it.
Yeah, almost certainly that their goal will be to sell as many
Nice marksmanship.
copies of Halo on consoles first, on Xboxes first, and then a year later, 6 months later, it will come out to Steam. I don't think it will be anything weird like an Epic Game exclusive, but that would be weird, certainly, if that did happen. Wow, and I am feeling really tired, so I think we will probably leave a lot of games. The action RPG Astrogos has been announced for PS5, PS4, and PC. We may have talked about this before.
My quarry won't escape that easy.
Let's see, maybe not.
To hear your melody.
It's also very possible that the games just all look incredibly similar. Yep, this soft CG look is probably going to come and go, I would suspect, fairly quickly. I think this is fine, but it does kind of feel like it's probably targeting the Switch more than targeting a high level hyper realistic graphics that you would expect to see on PC or PS5 or Xbox Series X. Yeah, we talked about this game. This was also one of these games that might be very interesting looking in its trailer, but is actually not that interesting looking, that interesting to actually play. Let's see. Darkest Dungeon 2 launches in early access on October 26th, which really just reminds me that I need to play Darkest Dungeon 1, since that's one of the mini games. Well, there's quite a few that I've purchased recently and not gotten around to playing over the past couple years. Epic Games Store exclusive, it seems, at least for the early access, so let all of the other people work the bugs out and then get it on Steam later, I'm sure. Boku Hime Project for PC is coming to Steam on October 15th. It currently was only available via the DL site. Now, I think the Boku Hime project is a visual novel series about a cross-dresser. Here, we can see Gematsu has like 4 links as far as the times they've talked about it. Because Boku generally is the male form of I. Yeah. Yeah, this is the one where the brother is cross-dressing to go to an all-girls school to investigate what happened to his sister. And really contrived idea. And so this is probably the sister standing behind the brother. And so, yeah. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's, I think, what. So, yeah. Main character here, Erika Ikusa. And then Minato Ikusa is the real form. Yeah. So, with the cross-dressing narrative, it was kind of a unique game from that perspective, and perhaps there was some thought that it might have trouble getting released on Steam. I suspect that's not really the case. I suspect they just didn't want to try and censor it if there needed to be any censorship, or didn't want to even bother to try and sell it. Japanese people will certainly tolerate the occasional dip into a weirder, more potentially queer type story, but they tend not to want it to succeed greatly. Being homosexual or being a cross-dresser, which are different things, is still considered a large taboo in most Asian countries, but Japan in particular. Let's see. Gematsu says Reverse Collapse Codename Bakery has been delayed to 2022. I don't even remember this game, so it's being delayed does not really affect me. Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo for PC launches December 16th. Console version coming out sometime in 2022. So it's starting out on PC. I think Vertigo is considered probably a better movie than the more known Alfred Hitchcock movies like Psycho,
I love this job. Of course I do.
or I guess Psycho is probably the only more known movie that Hitchcock has made. So yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting what that really is going to feel like and how that's really going to work as a game to try and adapt
There's no
a Hitchcock movie, because there are definitely classic movies that could easily be converted into a video game and mined for more interesting stories, or at least historically relevant retellings of stories. Hit that.
Hunt, be my guest.
Say goodbye.
Gamatsu has the same story, Dying Light 2, delayed to February 4th of 2022, with different screenshots. PlayStation 5 second major system update launches September 15th, adds SSD expansion and more, and the and more probably isn't that interesting. I guess you can read this article if you're interested. Nintendo Switch also came out with an update that added Bluetooth headphone connectivity natively, which that's something that should have been in the device on day one, not 2+ years later. Let's see, Famitsu review scores are out. So Hitman 3 apparently just was released, or just got around to being reviewed by Famitsu, getting 35 out of 40. Lost Judgment is getting a 38 out of 40, so it's very well received, where Tales of Arise got a 35 out of 40. So Lost Judgment is definitely the winner of the popularity reviews. Little Big Planets series has permanently lost its online features for the PS3 and Vita. They took them down because they were basically getting flooded with hate messages. That's what they said, and obviously they didn't care enough to bring them back online.
There you are, my little trespasser.
But they did bring back the PlayStation 4 versions of some of the Little Big Planet games, and those were the versions that were buggier. But it still makes a lot of sense you'd bring back the newer, more recent versions of the games if you're going to bring back servers for any of them. And those servers have been down for a fairly long time, several months.
Nice marksmanship.
See, GameDeveloper.com says Stillfront has acquired Emirati mobile studio Jawaker for $205 million. Jawaker, Stillfront, Emirati company, as in from UAE. GameDeveloper.com says Activision Blizzard Works are saying the company broke federal labor law in a NLRB, National Labor Review Board, complaint. They accuse the company of coercive behavior in a complaint filed. There clearly are employees that are really upset with Blizzard, but you know, a story like this, particularly since it's the narrative that we know GameDeveloper.com wants to push, they could be incredibly blown out of the water. I could see a single employee that just knows the system very well just filing complaint after complaint after complaint and trying to use the government to add legitimacy to what is effectively a cancel attempt for our company. Yeah. So yeah, I could definitely see that happen. And and then it get blown out of proportions as if every single employee had major complaints and major grievances against the company. But I don't believe that really is what's happening. I think Arkham's Razor probably implies that there are at least a significant number of employees who are upset with the way Activision Blizzard is run. You've seen just too many people get fired and leave the company for it not to be true. That would just be too big of a coincidence. So yeah, I give credence that there is probably a lot of people that are upset with the company and filing complaints. And it does kind of feel like Activision Blizzard is either failing to really defend itself properly or just straight up acting in guilty looking ways. So at the very least they are having major PR issues. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says the Sumo Group has acquired the UK studio Oroc Digital for 8.3 million. Read further if you're interested yourself at GameDeveloper.com. GameDeveloper.com says Funcom has acquired a swath of properties including Conan and Solomon Kane. So the Conan Exile developers wants to start incorporating properties into the games in more innovative ways. So interesting. It has acquired the rights to properties including Conan the Barbarian, Mutant Year Zero, and Solomon Kane by purchasing Cabinet Group. The Conan Exiles developer will merge the entire Cabinet portfolio into its IP studio, Rogue Signatures, and is already working on an unannounced project based on one of those franchises, probably a Conan game. I don't think Conan Exiles was particularly the best game ever, but I kind of hope it was successful enough that a new Conan game that was less of a survival Minecraft clone and more of a narrative experience might be made. There was another Conan game that came out relatively around the time Conan Exiles happened and it didn't succeed, and pretty much the history of Conan games have been a history of failure, and that sucks, certainly. You would hope for more success.
Is that how you treat a lady?
The hunt has only begun.
Did not move fast enough. What I'm trying to understand here, though, does that mean they just own Conan outright, or did they purchase the rights in forms of video games? It seems to me like they just own Conan outright, which honestly it would be more interesting to have a Conan animated Netflix series or a Conan live action movie made in parallel than to just have yet another version of Conan Exiles or another Conan video game itself. Conan comic books should be made. There's a lot of, I know there's Red Sonja comic books being made, but I'm not sure that they got the rights to that. But yeah, I'm not really sure there are any Conan comic books being released on a regular basis. Gematsu has the story. The Switch system update version 13.0.0 is now available, adding Bluetooth audio support. So clearly their versioning system is major number, minor number, patch number is typically how you would read this.
My quarry won't
So,
escape that easy.
13.00 tells you this is a major update with any number here going up telling you that at least there's major features being added, and any number going up here tells you there's a patch of some sort, probably security. The main thing it adds is the ability to connect to Bluetooth. I don't think there's too much else. You can apparently update the dock. You can maintain the internet connection in sleep mode, which, yeah, for some people's internet connection, that's useful. There's a different way to calibrate the control sticks. And you can now filter between 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz frequency under Wi-Fi, which I wouldn't have sworn that the Switch even supported 5 gigahertz. Yeah. I feel like I've added quite a lot of Wi-Fi devices in the past couple years to my house and network, and Wi-Fi is getting, I think, a little bit hurt because of that, and the number of clients and devices potentially is only going to go higher and higher as people have more smart homes and more smart devices. Let's see. Himatsu says Phantom Breaker Omnia has been delayed to early 2022, which looks like a fighting game. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Lethal Gamble 1 Werewolf Puzzle, which looks like it's a Chinese-only visual novel. Doesn't look terrible. $4.89, Chinese only. Yep. I could just barely tell by the art style that it was Chinese. Like, I could have definitely believed that it was Korean, maybe even Japanese. Let's see, Iga Sumiko Garashi Aoi Tsukio no Maho no Ko Game de Asabo Iga no Seikai has been announced for Switch. Boy, is that a mouthful. Has just like 2 full Japanese sentences in a row.
Woodland Fortress at 12 o'clock.
I'm trying to skip the games mostly. A game called Magician's Dead Force of the Soul has been announced for PS4, not PS5.
Let us play together.
Let's see, it's a battle action game returning to console. See what this really looks like. Yeah. This feels like this might be player versus player. And yep. This kind of has the problem with any game where you have magic skills, is that the magic skills look too generic and kind of just too poorly animated. I think BioShock and BioShock Infinite is probably one of the best examples of a game that
My domain reaches to the end of the skies.
sorry, I'm yawning. Like, that's probably one of the best examples of adding magical abilities and having them flow in play very nicely. Video Game Chronicle has the same story about the Bluetooth audio support being added, specifically focusing on that. Video Game Chronicle also says Xbox has confirmed its Tokyo Game Show live stream and says to expect a local celebration. No new global debuts should be expected, however. And they're getting into a spirit by making a black and white Xbox mech. Although I don't know why they cropped the image like this on Video Game Chronicle. So when they say local celebration, I think you take that to mean there won't probably be any real new announcements of games. It will just be older, already released or already announced games that are more targeted to a Japanese audience.
I shall take the front.
Video Game Chronicles says 30 years later, Sonic's composer has given Green Hill Zone song lyrics,
Nice marksmanship.
which, yeah, giving it lyrics is probably not really necessary, and I'm not sure if it's really going to change too much. Here's the lyrics translated to English, but I imagine it probably sounds better in Japanese. Any song is going to sound better in its native language. Yeah, we're not getting those victories as easily playing Forestcraft. Let's see. And I think Video Game Chronicle here also misunderstands the Famitsu review system, because they're saying that the Lost Judgment review in Famitsu issues a near perfect score, whereas I think 38 out of 40 is fairly rare. It's not incredibly rare. I know Famitsu has only given like 5 40s out of 40s because it is 4 different reviewers giving somewhere between, I guess they could give a 0 to a 10. Maybe they have to give at least 1. But, you know, I bet there's probably been at least several dozen, if not several hundred, games that have gotten 30 out of 40. Which isn't to say that Lost Judgment is bad by any means. It sounds, as far as I know, to be a pretty well made game. But I think you have to realize that 38 out of 40 is not that high. And honestly, it would only be it's only partially good, big news because of the fact that most games in the West tend to get incredibly over-reviewed and way too high scores for what they really deserve. GameDeveloper.com says Necrodancer Brave Yourself is paying the staff to pursue personal project, which I assume that the personal projects are not becoming property of the company at that point. They're just getting 20% time off and probably being paid a salary. Is so like 20% of your work hours at your discretion can be used to program your own projects, which, yeah, that's fine for Necrodancer's developer because they are in a position where they've made some money, and I imagine they don't have too many projects that they're working on right now. I also wouldn't be surprised if this is a company that isn't really going to ever make another game, maybe just another Necrodancer game. And so they are just letting their employees stay employees in the short term, but in the long run, they are actually just going to go bankrupt and put all of the employees out of a job. I'm not against by any means the idea of a work on your own side projects while you're being paid by a hourly wage or a salary wage, because honestly, if you get the job done, if you get the work done, if nobody's complaining, then you've met the requirements. The idea that you have to sit around and be bored when nothing's going on at a job is really just an idea that your employer is trying to torture your employees and drive them crazy.
Forever and ever more.
And there sadly is several, there are too many employees that literally are just trying to do that. So,
Stay away.
yeah,
I've lost some of my edge.
yeah. Generally, I think all bosses should say we don't care what people do, as long as they're not doing something incredibly offensive to some, at least, like looking at porn on during work hours at the office. Honestly, even after work hours at the office, looking at porn is not really acceptable.
Divine summons brings me here.
I would much rather employees working on side projects than flirting with each other or just chatting and distracting each other and being bored. Anyways, moving on.
I shall take the front.
According to game developer, TinyBuild has acqui-hired the Deadside developer Brad Pixel for $17.1 million. Don't remember Deadside as a game. I question if Brad Pixel is the real name. Video Game Chronicle says the PlayStation 5's new update finally lets users remove the screenshot confirmation icon. Anytime a player took a screenshot, a small icon would appear in the corner to notify that the screenshot had been captured, which I suppose by default that is what you would want to have happen, so you can inform people that, hey, you just pressed this button and you saved a screenshot that's going to take up space on your hard drive. I assume that's how that works, because the I don't think that the game itself just takes screenshots when it thinks it should.
Cycles on.
That would be interesting.
It won't be long now.
Like, if you had a fighting game that on the final blow that does that final punch, it made a screenshot on the final blow, or if it made a video, like 5-second clip of the final attack in a fighting game and save that. That'd be interesting, but you would also kind of want it not to waste your time,
Feel their desire.
and waste your hard drive space with extra reads and writes. GameDeveloper.com has more hype around Deathloop, capturing the retro future essence of Deathloop through its score. Here we have a game on Steam called Chicken Duty, which looks like nothing. Free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Dog Nuts, which looks like nothing of interest, for $1.39, English only. Here we have Miko Adventure Puffball, which looks just like a platformer and not a good one. $10.79, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Merrick's Market, which looks like nothing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting wrecked
Hey, let's play.
from all the salt and from that pizza I ate before I started streaming. Yeah, Merrick's Market doesn't look like anything of interest. It is $17.99, English and a whole bunch of
I shall take the
languages.
front.
Here we have a game called
Nice
Starfight,
marksmanship.
Starfighter Aces, which looks like nothing. $4.99 English only. Video Game Chronicles says Battlefield 2042 could be set for a delay, it's claimed. 1,047 games has netted $100 million to expand and support its sci-fi shooter game Splitgate. Here we have a game called Themes of Dark and Light, which doesn't look like anything of interest, for $5.94. Whole bunch of languages. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says another senior HR executive has exited Activision. The Activision Blizzard head of people, Claudine Naughton, is departing with the company, with former Disney HR exec Julia Hodges taking her place. Wow. So, are you supposed to respect a former Disney HR executive when Disney kind of is not good with its employees either? And frankly, HR people in general are not people that I really think are guaranteed to be particularly good at HR, even as far as what an average person would expect human resources should do versus what human resources actually does do. Like, maybe an HR person is good at protecting the company from complaints and lawsuits against them, but they tend to be very, very bad about making sure employees don't get abused or treated unfairly or illegally. Although it is still once again important to point out, this sign does not really correlate to this headline, and this headline also should just name the person instead. This headline should be Activision Blizzard's apostrophe S Claudine Naughton departing the company, replaced by Julia Hodges. You don't have to put the full description in the headline. You could come down later and explain that she was the head of people and that she's being replaced by a Disney HR executive, which they do. This entire sentence here is literally just a copy and paste of this sentence above the picture, and then the picture should be more relevant instead of just reasserting and pushing a narrative once again. I mean, I don't know how you don't just call it propaganda when an editor is putting pictures that are not really related to the story. An editor is approving and causing more and more stories to come out to push that same narrative. It's nearly every day either a story against Activision and Blizzard is tweeted or retweeted by GameDeveloper.com, and by retweeted in this case I mean they're retweeting one of their old stories, not retweeting anybody new saying anything. Gamatsu says the action platformer Brain Meltdown Into Despair is coming to Switch in October. Let's see if we can get a general idea of what this game is. Okay. It looks like two characters just platforming. Do you have to control both characters at the same time? Seems like you probably do. Yeah. If you're trying to play single player, at least. Which that probably means there's not much of a gimmick to the game otherwise. It is probably a one-note gimmick or idea. Gametsu says Tales of Luminaria first official live stream is set for September 24th. So an announcement for an announcement. HappyNet announces its 20 Tokyo Game Show 2021 online partner companies, which I think I've heard of Calypso and Kalikawa Games. I think I've seen Piku, but I think I've heard of Playism and Broccoli. A lot of these feel like anime companies more than anything. They probably do a little bit of everything. But yeah, those are not particularly major companies. Let's see. Hit this, this, and this. Probably should have killed this and this on second thought. Yeah. Let's see. Gamatsu says Battle Spirits Connected Battlers launches January 20th in Japan. Which, yeah, this looks like a collectible card game. Is this for the Switch? It kind of just looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh clone, and it doesn't look particularly visually interesting. Yeah, it's PS4 and Switch. The art style, the fashion style, all feels like it is dumbed down and made safe for kids. And I assume my desire for a more family-friendly audience.
The hunt has only begun.
A baby bird's nest. Gotta report this lickety split.
Let's see. Bullets per Minute for the PS4, Xbox One launches October 5th, according to Gamatsu. Here we have a game on Steam called Captures 2, which looks like just a chess puzzle game. $1.49 English only. A game called Industria launches September 30th. It's a first-person shooter title of the 2000s. How it describes itself.
Stop it.
Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you're kind of wandering around in some weird, kind of surreal world, doing a lot of first-person shooting, maybe doing some puzzling too. Let's see, here we have a game called Halloween Memory Reborn, which looks like nothing of interest. $4.79.
There you are, my little trespasser. What an
Let's see.
I just want to feel the emptiness.
Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Digital Bros has become the co-opener of nascent RPG developer Nesting Games. It's a little too inside baseball for me for today.
Nice
Here we have a
marksmanship.
game called Explosive Candy World, which is $3.19. A Sonic Colors Switch patch removes the most severe glitch, but it's not bug-free yet. Which, yeah. Seems like a visual appearance glitch has been fixed, but also it shouldn't have been released that way in the first place. Here we have a game on Steam called Follow the Cat, which is a physics puzzler game. Doesn't look terrible, so I'll put it on the follow list. $14.99 English and Turkish. Here we have a game just called Sick, which is probably just an asset flip horror game from the looks of the screenshot. Walking simulator, maybe. $7.19 English only. Yeah, and the screenshot, the trailer here is showing incredibly low frame rates, so I'm going to say no to that. Here we have a game called Move Up, which looks like nothing of interest for VR. $1.79 English only. Here we have a game called Ruins of Albion, which looks like nothing. Free, English only. Here we have a game called Tomb Rumble, which might be something if it's not player versus player, but I bet it might be player versus player. They're calling it an online MMO platformer, and it is online PvP. Free to play, but then several DLC elements. Sony is releasing a PlayStation 5 Pulse 3D wireless headset in Midnight Blue to match the Midnight Blue controller, according to Video Games Chronicle. Horizontal resequencing and dynamic transitions for game music composers. Article talking about music composition from GameDeveloper.com. Video Games Chronicle says Bethesda is investigating the Deathloop stuttering issue on PC as a priority. Here we have a game called Timberborn, which looks like it's a colony sim. Doesn't look particularly interesting. Early access, $22.49, several languages. And the PS4's latest system update adds new trophy and messaging features, according to VideoGamesChronicle.com. And then this guy, I'm just dying. This pizza is giving me, I think, acid reflux or something. Like, I'm gonna have to end this early. Anyways, Anthony Mackie is going to star as John Doe in the live-action Twisted Metal series for Sony TV and PlayStation Productions. He was in the... He's going to be the new Captain America character in the Marvel Universe. That's barely video game related. And then a game called Spider Hack launches in 2022 for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Alright. So with that, I've still a whole row of games to talk about, and I may curate some things between now and Friday. But I think I'm going to have to just end this stream here, because that is not really going to work. I'm going to just start coughing like crazy. I will do this and probably not bother to do any of this. I think it's fairly obvious to just replace that and then get one victory with Havencraft instead. And so I'm gonna just quickly scroll down my Twitter feed. Susan Wojcicki tweeted out 3 different tweets almost in a row. Yep, and they're still pushing YouTube Shorts, so I guess I should applaud them for not giving up on it immediately, but I'm not sure YouTube Shorts are getting any better. Not sure they're getting any worse either, but they're not really fitting into any idea of content that I would make, even if I could make YouTube Shorts, which I don't think I can. Yeah, I just don't think you're allowed until you have 1,000 subscribers. But yeah, I couldn't really think as far as what that would take, or how that would improve my quality of my content. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below, and if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.